Hey, what's up guys? This is Hardy Quest with the Ninja Everyday, and I want to talk to you today about how to build a shelter that can keep you warm, keep you dry, even if you don't have any equipment. And this is a debris hut or a leaf hut. Now the debris hut or a leaf hut is a frame of sticks built and insulated on the outside and the inside with forest debris, leaves or grasses or things like that. Now the first step is to find the right spot to place your shelter, whether it's a tent or anything else. And there's 5 considerations that you want to make. We call them the 5 W's. One is widowmaker. Before you settle on a site, look up. Make sure there's no big, dead, overhanging branches that would wreck your day if they fell down on you or your shelter. Right? If you're against a cliff face, look for loose rocks and things like that, anything that could fall down. Second is wildlife. Look for signs around you for wildlife that could be dangerous. One that's often overlooked is the ground. You want to scrape away the leaves on the ground wherever you're proposing to build your shelter and look for small holes. If it's a pinky sized hole, it could be a nest of ground dwelling yellow jackets, and you don't want to set your tent or shelter on top of that. If it's a little bit bigger, it could be a snake, could be a mouse, and you don't want either one of those as a roommate for your night if you're sleeping, especially in a leaf hut. The next consideration to make is water. You want to be near enough to a water source that you can use, but not too close, because if you're too close to a water source, there's going to be more insect activity, particularly mosquitoes, and the air that blows off of that water is going to be significantly cooler than the air a little bit further away. So if staying warm is your top priority, keep a little space from you and the water. The next W is wood. I want to make sure I have enough resources nearby that I can use to build my shelter, make my fire, do all that sort of stuff. One of the things that I really like having close to me is a tree or two with really close trunks together so that we can place a log in between and push against it. We call it a breaking tree, so that we can break a limb to a specific length, because after a while when we get close to finishing this shelter, we're going to want everything to be sort of specifically high so that we don't have anything poking through our insulation, so we don't have rain dripping down on our head. The next W that we want to consider is weather. We want to make sure that we're protected from the weather and we can take advantage of the beneficial weather patterns. We want to be able to take advantage of the early morning sunlight, so I like to place the entrance to my shelters facing east. I also want to protect against the prevailing weather patterns for us in the south that come up from the south. So I like to have my tent facing sort of northeast so that I'm protected from the wind blowing in from the south and getting the first rays of the early morning sun. I also want to make sure I'm not down in a gully, so if it does rain or storm hard, rain doesn't wash down through my shelter, or it doesn't wash and settle into the bottom of my shelter. So I'd like to be in sort of a high, dry location if at all possible. The first steps to creating the shelter, once you've established your site, is to get what you need to set up the shelter. You could find a stick or a tree that grows up and it has a Y, but if you find 2 forked shaped sticks, if I find 2 sticks about as high as my belly button like this, I'm going to be able to put them together and lay what we'll call a ridge pole in the middle of these 2, and it will form a locking tripod. Very stable structure, and you can move it wherever to take advantage of whatever conditions you need. So I'm going to take my 2 sticks, set them up so they go together, and then drop my ridge pole down in the middle of the 2 forks. The downward pressure will make it lock into place and create a very stable tripod. Now from here, I'll lay underneath this. Make sure I've got enough room, and I want it to be tight, especially if it's going to be cold. I want it to be pretty tight. So this looks pretty good. I'll be just inside the front of the shelter. This will be my door, and I'll be able to lay my ribs off of this so I can slide down into this to insulate myself at night. So these are the first steps in creating a leaf hut or a debris hut. This is a useful side tip, but you could bring a saw, you could bring a machete, you could bring a hatchet, things like that, but they'll weigh you down. It's extra equipment to bring. If you wanted to process wood to a certain length for a shelter or for making your fire at night, whatever you do, don't set it down and try to stomp on it, because logs get slick and you could slip, especially if you're already in a survival situation. Don't make it a first aid situation by hurting yourself. Right? You can beat your leg to death by slamming this down on top of your leg this way. Don't do that. Just find a tree with some trunks that are close together like this. Figure out the length that you want to break this stick. So I'm going to break this one in half so I can use for a shelter. So I want to say right here at this knot, right here at this sort of funny knot. That's what I want to do. So I'm going to put it in between my breaking trees, put my knot right here against my main tree, and I'm going to carefully pulse and push. Don't charge into it, but pulse and push here until I start to get some action. Pull careful so you don't fall. And you'll break it right at the spot. It's not surgically close, but it's pretty darn close. So this way I can determine the lengths of the sticks that I want by using something really simple like a tree with a couple of trunks together. After we have the initial frame with the two fork-shaped sticks and the ridgepole set up, then we want to place sticks like ribs all the way down. It should sort of look like a whale's rib cage. What would be great is if there's no sticks that really protrude way up off of the top, because what we're going to do next is pile up some leaves against the outside of this. You want to do the outside first because the weight of the leaves pressing in will hold the sticks together. And then once we establish the thickness and height that we need on the outside, then we can begin filling it with leaves to add some insulation to the ground to keep us off of the ground so we don't suffer from conductive heat loss. One note about selecting leaves for insulation. If you do it right around your shelter, it's going to be real obvious that you were here, because we're going to be scraping up leaves and it takes a lot of leaves to do this. If concealment is your objective, you need to get your leaves from different places further around your shelter so that it doesn't look so beaten down where you're going to be sleeping. All right, so I spent the last couple of hours finishing up this debris hut. What I did is I brought a bunch of leaves from away from the area of my shelter so I didn't mess up the ground around the shelter too much. Piled it up on the shelter nice and thick. The colder it is, the thicker you need to go. So if it was going to be below freezing, I would want to double the thickness of these walls, which again would take more and more time, more leaves. Then I started shoving the inside full. All right, I shoved it in and packed it down twice. This is my third fill. And then finally I took some light branches and laid on the outside just to keep the wind from blowing the leaves off. The way that you enter the shelter is feet first. So I'm gonna go in, the leaves are gonna compress a good bit. And what I like to do in the fastest form is use my backpack as my door. So I'll go start to compress these. You've gotta sort of wiggle in. Just sit on it, compress it down. Sit on your butt. And I've compressed them a good amount, but you slide down inside the shelter, all the way in. Pull whatever door you're gonna have behind you, and then prop it up, and you're inside your debris hut. You want it very, very tight. The tighter it is, the warmer it's going to be. You want it low so you don't have a lot of space above you. And if you measure it out right, you'll be able to lay on your back with your feet up and you won't be kicking your sticks and you'll be able to breathe. It won't feel too claustrophobic. The one bit of advice I have for you while you're in here at night is don't turn on your headlamp, because you'll see the eyeballs of all the spiders living in the leaves with you. So if that bothers you, it's best not to know. If you like this content, stay tuned to this channel for more stuff like this. And until we see ya, Ninja every day.